Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Board of Education meeting. The board has already met in executive session and has saluted the flag at that time. So, Mr. McLaughlin, if we could have a roll call, please.
Ms. Beckman?
Here.
Ms. Schaefer?
Here.
Mr. Salmon?
Here.
Mrs. Richmond?
Here.
Mrs. White?
Here.
Mrs. Korn?
Here.
Mrs. McCune?
Here.
Mrs. Woldridge?
Here.
Mr. Markarian?
Here.
Mr. Syatt?
Here.
Ms. Fox?
Here.
Mrs. Gray?
Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. This is a regular meeting of the Board of Education of Bernards Township. Notice of the time and place of this meeting was provided, and copies of that resolution were forwarded to the official newspapers as designated by the Board of Education and to the Township Clerk, and a copy of the notice was posted on the bulletin board of the Board of Education offices in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act. Due to the public health emergency in the state of New Jersey as declared in Executive Order 103, the board will be suspending its normal meeting procedures this evening and conducting a virtual meeting. Directions for accessing the virtual public meeting were posted on the district website, www.bernardsboe.com. The same directions were posted at our intended but unavailable meeting location. We very much welcome public input. Because this is a virtual meeting, public comment will be handled in one of two ways. Public comment method number one, which is the preferred method this evening. Step one, when you are ready to make a public comment, join the Board of Education meeting via the Zoom link posted on the district webpage, www.bernardsboe.com. Please plan for your participation in the meeting by turning on your camera and microphone, dressing appropriately, maintaining a proper background setting for your camera's view, having quiet space, and muting the YouTube live stream of the Board of Education meeting when you are speaking so that there is no feedback with your participation in the Zoom meeting. Step two, you will be placed in a queue and admitted to the meeting when it is your turn to make a public comment. Once you see that you are admitted to the Zoom call, it will be your turn to make your public comment. Please begin your public comment by stating your full name and your address. Step three, after making your public comment, please exit the Zoom meeting so that the next person waiting to make a public comment may be admitted. Public comment method two, if the preferred full video method of public comment is not an option for you, please follow these directions to submit your public comment. Starting at 7 p.m., email your comment to btconnect@bernardsboe.com or text your comment to 908-292-3047. Use public comment as the email subject or start of a text message. Indicate your first and last name and address. This is required for public comment to be included. Regardless of whether you use method one or method two for public comment, please note that public comments are limited to a maximum of approximately 3 minutes if read aloud. Individuals are permitted a maximum of one public comment during public comment on agenda items and another on non-agenda items if desired. The Board of Education reserves the right to limit the length of allotted time for public comment. This evening, that time will be 45 minutes for both agenda and non-agenda items as needed. No public comments will be accepted prior to 7 p.m. or after item 19, board forum on the agenda.
Madam President.
Yes, Mr. Markarian.
So in our efforts to maximize the opportunity for public comment, we did actually include a third method. I apologize for not clarifying that with you, but there is a dial-in method as well. That is also posted on the district webpage so that if the video method doesn't work, but folks can dial in and read their public comment for themselves. That is also available, and the instructions for that are also on the webpage. And obviously, if the video comment doesn't work and dialing in by voice does not work, then you correctly shared that we are still allowing the method that we have been using, allowing folks to text or email their comments in. Sorry about that.
Thank you. And with that, I believe we are up to the student representatives report. Juliet.
Great, thank you so much. So this past week, we celebrated Halloween at Ridge. So we all got to display our school spirit through the Ridge Spirit hashtag, and it was a lot of fun seeing people dressed up, seeing a lot of the teachers dressed up. I was really happy to see that. This is part of like the ongoing effort that Dr. Lazovic has had to really try to increase school spirit, both, you know, online and in person. So that was really good to see that a lot of people participated. Additionally, a lot of the students are really excited for homecoming this Friday, and the Student Gov is currently making plans to really try to bring us together and embrace some normalcy and really start to see some of those traditions come back. Additionally, we're happy to see that the Ridge Drama is also working towards, you know, embracing something that feels more familiar. So they're going to be hosting their fall plays outdoors in Pleasant Valley, which I thought was a really creative way to stay safe and still engage in these events. One thing though that I did notice that a lot of students mention is there tends to be a lot of stress leading up to Wednesdays, because not only do we have every single one of our classes, so we have all of those assignments, but it seems that teachers are still sort of scheduling a lot of tests on that day because they tend to have all of their classes. It's easier to organize. So there's some concern there that like Tuesday nights tend to be really, really heavy because there's assignments for all our classes and also the extra studying. So that's my report. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Juliet. Does anyone have any questions for Juliet? I don't see any questions. I think we're all on one screen here. Thank you so much, Juliet. We appreciate you being here. If you have a lot of work to do, we understand, but of course you're welcome to stay with us. With that, we are on to the board presentation, which is the results of the Return to Instruction survey. Mr. Markarian.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm going to share screen here. Okay, hopefully everyone's seeing a Return to Instruction parent survey report of results slide. Thumbs up if yes. Excellent, thank you very much. Okay, so I know that one of the common questions that we have with respect to our return to instruction is how are things with respect to the breakdown of students that are in the 100% virtual learning program or the blended learning program. Just to remind everyone, the 100% virtual learning program, students are staying at home and not coming to school for any of their classes. And in the blended learning program, the students are coming to school on the A-day, B-day cohort basis, coming to school on roughly half the days, Monday, Tuesday with the A cohort, Thursday, Friday with the B cohort, and then Wednesdays, depending on the age level, students are coming to school at the elementary level, taking turns for A day and B day, and at the 6-12 level, the students are all home for an all virtual day. So that breakdown is something that evolves a little bit over time, and this is a current snapshot of how that breakdown is as of the last couple days. You can see the total number of students and how they break down between the 100% virtual and the blended. We're roughly at 62 to 38%, 62% of students coming to school in the cohort system and about 38% of students in the 100% virtual model. This is a breakdown by school. You can see each school is represented as a column. The percent of blended students is shown in blue. the balance is shown as red in virtual. The last column, we do have some students that are placed out of district at other schools. So in that case, those students are all attending the school itself. So I just wanted to share that with you. That was not actually part of the survey, but it is a common question that we get all of the time, and it has been evolving a little bit in the last month or so. So I wanted to share that with you first. Now, getting into the actual survey results, I wanted to just start with some thank yous. First of all, thank you to all of the families. In roughly a week's time, even less really, we had a lot of families respond to our survey. We did ask families to respond for each child that they had enrolled in our school system, which provided the parents opportunities to reiterate feelings multiple times if they had multiple students, but also they may have expressed different opinions and feelings as a function of each of their children and what was working best for their children. So that's something to keep in mind as you consider the different results that are represented by this data, is that families were able to respond multiple times, but only one time per child. I need to also thank our supervisor for mathematics, Mr. Grant Comer. Mr. Comer was instrumental in helping us break down the data using Data Studio to prepare some summary tables and charts of the information. I did ask Mr. Comer to join us this evening, and he will set me straight if I make a mistake on one of his charts. And again, thank you, Mr. Comer, for being here tonight and for helping us to organize this information for ourselves and also for the board and the public. So we appreciate that very much. So I am switching to the survey results in Data Studio. As I mentioned, maybe I could get a thumbs up. You should see a slide called Summary of Responses Collected. Thank you, Ms. Fox. I can see that I managed to get us to the right report, so that's wonderful. So starting off with the first of 5 pages here, we just wanted to share how the responses broke down. We had 3,928 responses that we cataloged in the data. Now, just to be fully transparent, we did have a little over 4,000 individual responses. However, in some cases, families responded more than one time for the same child. So we just kind of tried to filter things out so that we would have one response per student. Nevertheless, that brought us in at about 4,000 individual student responses, specifically 3,928. And you can see how that breaks down at each grade level in the slide on the left. And on the right, you can see how that breaks down with respect to the schools, how many students are represented at each school building. And moving on to the circle chart, you can see a representation of what is the learning program that folks are currently in right now. And this, you'll notice, is pretty darn close to what I shared at the very beginning, which showed our split at roughly 62 and 38%. In this response, we had about 35.4% of the respondents were in the 100% virtual learning model, and about 61.3% of respondents were students in the blended learning model. And we do have some students that are coming to school every day to meet special needs in some of our self-contained programs. So you can see the breakdown of the students based on the program that they are currently enrolled in. Moving down a little bit to the bottom chart here, that's simply the same information, whether the students are currently in the blended learning program, the 100% virtual learning program, or in fact coming daily. You'll notice we have a robust preschool program with self-contained special needs programs in it, which is why you see such a large percentage of the students that are in daily in person there in the preschool. That's also true with grade 12. With our vocational students, there's a large percentage of students coming daily for that special program as well. Then beginning with kindergarten through 12th grade, you see a very consistent split, right around that 60% or so fraction for students in the blended program, and around the 30 to 40% range for students that are in the 100% virtual program. And again, the small fractions of students that are coming daily to meet special needs programs. So again, thank you to our families. A response rate of about 80% for our students is really a great response. Basically, the large majority of students have been represented in this survey. So thanks again for that response rate. So one of the questions you may recall from the survey was kind of a general "how are we doing" type question. Based on what you and your child have experienced to date, how would you rate the educational program? And we kept it pretty simple with a rating of poor, fair, good, or excellent. Obviously represented in the colors, excellent being blue, good green, fair is the yellow, and poor is the red. Again, we organized this information based on the grade level that the students are in, and also by the school building that the students are in. So predominantly, you can see that we were rated good or excellent. We did have a kind of across the board, roughly a quarter of respondents aggregate with the fair to poor rating. We also organized the responses based on the program that people are currently in. How do you feel about the program? So breaking that out between the daily in-person learning model, the 100% virtual learning model, and the blended learning model, you get a sense that the number of folks that are feeling good or excellent about their program is greater in these first two programs than in the blended learning model program. Next question was to rate the response to the pandemic in maintaining a safe school environment. And again, with the same color system, of course, you can see blue and green for good and excellent. Poor and fair are again represented in the red and yellow. Across the board, general feeling of good and excellent with respect to maintaining a safe environment. So in the next set of tables is a representation of where folks thought the district might be going in the future. So the question was, which of the following statements best characterizes the direction you would like to see the district go as we move through the school year? Now, obviously, we're going to see a lot about this question as we get into some of the open-ended responses as well. But I really just wanted to emphasize for everybody out there that obviously we would love for school to be back to normal, back to the way it was last fall. And I just don't want anyone to have any illusion about that. Obviously, our goal is to someday get back to normalcy as soon as we can in a safe way. And that, of course, is the crux and the challenge. But we wanted to kind of get a barometer check of what people were thinking right now for themselves. So we put out a few options, and as you can see, we represented those options in the table. And one of the choices was to maintain the existing hybrid program. And remember that when we say hybrid program, it means that the school system is running multiple programs for the students, okay? The hybrid program should not be confused with blended learning. The blended learning program is the AB cohort program that roughly 60% of our students are in. The hybrid program then is represented here in the green. The orange represents the concept of maintaining the cohort full day in person. So we tried to represent a couple of different options here going forward. The first being what we're doing now, right? The existing hybrid program means to maintain three things. Those three things we represented in the previous slides: the 100% virtual learning model, the blended learning model, and for some of our students, coming in daily. That is the current hybrid program, where we are running three different programs for our students: daily in person, 100% virtual, and the blended learning model with the AB cohort system, okay? So keeping with that was represented by about 41% of respondents overall. And you can see how that breaks down in different ways, right? You can see how it breaks down by grade level. Where are those folks by grade level? Where are those folks by school? And where are those folks by the current model that they are in? Okay, so those are the people who will feel as though, for now, as they look through the school year going forward, they're thinking to maintain our existing hybrid program, where we are in fact running three different programs. The second option that was given was to maintain cohorting, but to implement full day in-person instruction. So what that would mean is that we would still have A day and B day cohorts, but those cohorts would be for the full day. Right now, our A day and B day cohorts are not in for the full day. They're in for an abbreviated day. The main rationale there being not to have lunch and have situations where students are taking off their masks, and also to help the students get through a day where they have to wear a mask all day long. So we are abbreviating our day right now. If we were to go to a full day of that system, of course, we would have to bring lunch into the mix. 26% of respondents saw us trying to move in that direction going forward into the school year. That was the direction that they would like to see us go. An almost equal number of folks, 25% of respondents, would like to see us move in the direction where we don't have any cohorting, no A day, B day cohorting. Instead, the students would come to school in person together without cohorts. However, maintain the half day, so that, again, you're not dealing with lunch. Now, obviously, if you eliminate cohorting, you're going to have more students in the buildings at the same time. Is that number of students reduced? Yes, because many students are in the virtual program. So it's very interesting to look at the totals to see that about an equal number of responses were for maintaining the A day, B day cohorts for those in-person folks, but going to a full day. And about an equal number saying, get rid of the cohorts, but keep it a half day. In this model, of course, the students would be coming every day because there's no cohorting. And then in the gray is other, because we tried to make it clear that we recognize that this orange and this purple option were simply two other alternatives. Folks may have other things in mind that they were interested in expressing as something that they would like to see the district moving towards that's different from these three options of staying the course in the green or switching to what I called alternative 1 or alternative 2. I'm trying to stick to the words alternative 1 and alternative 2 instead of the word option, because option 2, as we all know, has its own meaning. meaning. So alternative 1 and alternative 2. So again, 7% of the responses represent seeing the district going in a direction that was different than these 3 choices. So how does that break out by grade? I mentioned that. How does it break out by current program? And how does it break out by school, right? I don't think anyone would be surprised that the 100% virtual learning model has a large proportion of folks saying, let's leave it like we're doing it now. The blended learning model had more of an emphasis on moving into one of these other options, the purple or the orange. Again, the orange being what I call alternative 1, full day with cohorts. Alternative 2, shortened day without cohorting. So you can see more folks in this range. Again, not surprising, because the blended learning model represents the folks that are coming to school for in-person instruction. Okay. Moving on to page 4, please consider the 2 alternatives to the current in-person learning model listed below, and then respond to the 2 questions that follow. So what we were trying to tease out here is, if the district were to move in the direction of offering a different in-person program in the form of what I was describing before as alternative 1, maintaining the A-day, B-day cohort system, but going with that full day of instruction, allowing for lunch, right? In this scenario, students would still only come to school on their A-day or B-day, but they would stay for the full day and eat lunch. And we'd have to figure out how to manage that, obviously, because we don't want large groups of students together without masks on in a cafeteria. So the simple question was, if your choice were to have this particular in-person program, or to choose the virtual learning model, how would you choose? We broke it down by looking at where people currently are. So those that are currently in the daily in-person learning model broke out this way. Those that are currently in the 100% virtual learning model said that they'd probably still want to be in the 100% virtual learning model for most of them. Some of them, 16% of those respondents said that they would choose in-person alternative number 1. If they were already in the blended learning model, which is the in-person model that we're currently running, 90% of them said that they would choose this model. Some of them said if we did that, they would switch to the virtual learning model. So the purpose here is to try to see what kind of movement might the district have to plan and manage if parents were offered this choice, in-person alternative 1 or 100% virtual model. This helps us understand the kind of movement that we might see in people's selections. Taking the same type of analysis, trying to understand movement between the current learning model programs, but this time, suppose that we offered a different scenario. Suppose that we said, either you choose the virtual learning model, you maintain that, you choose that, or you go to in-person alternative 2, where we would work through the elimination of the cohort system, starting at the lower grades, trying to move up through 12th grade over time. That obviously means that if you have no cohorts, kids are coming to school every day. And we propose that in that scenario, we would still dismiss the students early so that we would not have such large groups of students all trying to eat lunch. You can see how it breaks down again: daily in-person learning model, virtual learning model, and blended learning model, implying how students would select compared to where they are now, right? Some of the virtual learning model students are suggesting that they might move to this in-person alternative. If they're in the blended learning model, most of them are saying that they would stay in that, choosing this in-person alternative, but some of them indicated that they would move to the virtual learning model. That's a pretty large fraction of those that are in the blended learning model, indicating that they would switch to the virtual learning model. And based on a lot of the open-ended responses that I looked through, I think that the sentiment there is that it's too much to bring in all the students together. That's a lot of folks coming back, and your social distancing is going to be severely hampered. I suspect that's why we're seeing this fraction increase. Finally, we wanted to check on how technology was going. Pleasantly surprised that, not surprised, but pleased to see that things seem to be going pretty well. Having individual responses for each student allows us to chase down some of these, so I can connect with our IT director and based on this survey, see if we can respond to some of these situations where we have some no's in terms of having access to a device, doing really pretty well there, having access to internet, also doing well. And we did ask a question about the learning environment students had when they were not in school. So when they weren't in the school building and they had to work from home, or perhaps they, were going to grandma's house, or maybe it was some kind of daycare center when they were not in school. How was the learning environment? And certainly still very good, but we did notice a few percentage points of students where parents responded that they didn't have the greatest situation for a space to work when they were not at school. So that represents the information with respect to the data that was relatively easily quantified from the questions that were asked. But of course, that wasn't the only set of questions that were asked, right? We also had some open-ended responses, and therefore we want to get back to looking at the presentation to talk a little bit more about not just the Data Studio results, but also some of the open-ended responses. So we have a lot of folks to thank here. Depending on the question, we had teams of people working to break down the open-ended responses. As you can imagine, it does represent quite a challenge, but we did want to make sure that families had the opportunity to share what was on their mind in some different areas. So in this particular slide, I'm going to pass this one off to Ms. Fox. I know Ms. Fox and her team worked very hard at looking at a couple of 1,000+ responses, I think, in trying to take a look at the question. If you could make one improvement to the educational program that your child is currently in, what would that be? Ms. Fox?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Markarian. And you're right, there were over 2,500 comments in this particular question, which is understandable. And it was very interesting to see the range of comments people made about the current program. So they really fall primarily into the categories you see on this screen. And so I'm just going to talk about a few of them. There were some people, you'll see the first few comments on the left, that kind of took the opportunity to again reiterate their feeling about increasing instruction more than make a specific improvement to the program, right? So 369 people looking for more live instruction while the students are on their remote time. Part of the slide. 376 looking for a basic, some kind of a change in instruction or the schedule. So I'll talk about those in a minute. About 250 people, maybe similar to the other responses, of people saying they just would like to go back to normal, 5 full days, no cohorting. And then the other, Mr. Markarian, what is the one below 5 full days? It's blocked on my screen.
Sorry, Ms. Fox, it's a little hard to hear you.
Apologize. Is that better?
Yeah.
What does the one say under full days return to normal? It's blocked on my screen.
That's full days 186.
Right. So again, people asking for full days, whether they're 5 days or not. A large number of comments about the need for students who who are struggling emotionally or socially and looking for some type of, have made a suggestion about how we could address that. But as for some specific comments for improvement in instruction, they do range, right, on each topic. So the use of instructional time, there were a lot of comments on asking us to focus on academics only, or suggesting different ways that the type of instruction being delivered could change. There were a lot of requests for different types of assignments, such as projects and group work, for example. There were several comments, people asking for more small group or individualized instruction. On the topic of independent work, some people were asking for more independent work, suggesting there wasn't enough and on the asynchronous time, while others thought that there was far too much independent work for students to be doing on their own. There were several comments where people talked about the quality of in-person instruction for the blended learning student who was in the classroom, because the teacher's attention was also focused on what we call the Zoomers, the students who are Zooming into the room from home. So some parents suggested the teachers can't walk around the room as much as they normally can and things like that. So there were some comments about that. A lot of parents were asking for more extension opportunities and or more support opportunities for students who maybe needed some enrichment or some support. There were several opinions expressed on specific courses and subjects. So on specials, for example, there were people expressing their opinions about the way the specials are operating in the elementary school, either that it shouldn't be recorded or that it shouldn't be during the instructional day, or on the flip side, that things like physical education or art should actually be every day because their child really benefits from it. There were several comments about science labs and the way we're doing science labs and some suggestions about how to do that. Some parents were asking about some more hands-on instruction, providing some suggestions about how to change the way we do Wednesdays, or virtual Wednesdays at the secondary level. And then there was a really mixed opinion on workload. While some asked for more work, several asked for far less work. A lot of parents talked about how their child was struggling with organization, or that communication could be better from either the school or the teacher. And then you'll see there was a large number, well, not a large number, there were several comments about assessment in different ways. Or I think Juliet mentioned how there's sort of different opinions about providing assessments on Wednesdays because all the students are together, and so it's sort of easier to do, but it's also very stressful if the students have all the assessments on one day. Some parents were sort of asking that we do most of the assessments online so that they would be more fair for all of the students. There were several comments, 58, related to technology issues. And so I just thought I'd take the chance to say that, you know, if you're working on a technology issue that's ongoing, I'm sure you're working with the teacher, perhaps the building administrators, but you can also reach out to this email address, btsdtechhelp@bernardsboe.com. And they are happy to also assist in trying to figure out what might be going on with your device or your Zoom account or whatever the situation might be. On the far right, there were just some singleton comments that I put up here. So some parents talked about how difficult it is to learn virtually. I can attest to that, having a senior of my own. A couple parents asked for a dedicated Zoom teacher, you know, at the secondary level. So a teacher just focused on the Zoom students, the students at home, like we have at the K-5 level. A few requests for before and after care. Some comments about what the students at home, you know, their behavior during a Zoom class can be distracting for their child. Comments about the size of the virtual classes at the elementary level. And again, some requests that we be sure and maintain our virtual only option. Parents are working where they have that available to them for the rest of the year. Some parents were very concerned about teachers. They can see how hard the teachers are working, managing several different learning environments and groups of students, and sort of saying that they can see that the teachers need some support with some ideas for how we might do that. And then a few safety concerns that were expressed that I'm sure were also expressed on the next question.
Thank you, Ms. Fox. Okay, so as Ms. Fox alluded to, folks did also take the opportunity to respond to the open-ended question if you could make one improvement to the current health and safety protocols being used, what would it be? So this was a very wide and varied response in terms of the numbers of singleton types of responses. And I will try to give you a sense of what some of those types of questions were, or responses were rather. I would say that one of the things that came up that was a little bit difficult to categorize related to health and safety was associated with communication and things related to medical procedures, quarantines, what's happening in the school, what's happening on the football field, things of that nature. And I just want to share with you a bit of the challenge that goes along with this as we try to understand what to communicate, how to communicate, when to communicate. It is a little bit of a challenge because sometimes the information gathering process takes a lot of time, determining who close contacts are, talking to coaches, talking to teachers, talking to outside organizations, health departments from other towns as students are interacting with other students throughout New Jersey in different soccer teams or hockey teams or club teams or whatever the sport might be or the activity might be. It can get complicated. I know that I received some questions over the weekend with respect to the game on Friday night at Ridge with St. Joe's, and why was the message about the situation with St. Joe's and Metuchen not earlier in the day? And it's just a matter of trying to get that communication done when other things are happening. And I apologize that we didn't get that out a little bit sooner before the game, but we were able to determine that the game was okay to have by working with the health departments. And I apologize for not getting the message out sooner, but we did get to it as quickly as we could in terms of trying to make sure that all the information was available for us to get that out to you. And that's another issue that kind of came through in terms of some of the messaging was, could we have more information? Can you be more detailed? That came up in some of the singleton responses with respect to health and safety communication. And this is something that our nursing coordinator and I were talking about a little bit today via email, trying to figure out what else can we share, how can we organize the information better. So we are working on the website to create a separate section, just cataloging all the different notices that go out to the public. And those are generally going to take one of two forms. They are typically going to be a general notice that one of our members of the school community, could be a staff member, it could be a student, but someone in the school community tested positive. So we have a general notice for that. Typically, we're talking about where the case is on a school level basis. We're trying to keep student identity very confidential. So we're not getting into a lot of detail about that. And I can appreciate that people might want to know more. And what I can say about that is that as these things occur, working with the health departments, really trying to identify anyone that might be a close contact to someone that tested positive. That becomes kind of the immediate focus, trying to make sure that those folks are identified and communicated with. And that's a challenge. I mean, it can be happening at all hours of the day, the night, the weekends, trying to track down who close contacts are, trying to get communication to people, trying to follow up with phone calls, emails, etc., to make sure that people are advised. It's a challenge, it's time consuming. So we're doing the best we can with that, trying to work with the local health departments. But I do want to say that generally speaking, within a day or two, 24 to 48 hours, typically, those folks that are going to be identified as close contacts with respect to a particular case will have been notified. So if you get that general notice that, hey, we had a case in the district at such and such school, and you have not received any communication specific to being an identified close contact of that case within a day or two, then you can expect that you're not going to get that communication. So it is a struggle, and the health department is doing a great job, really working with many communities in a tough situation to try to track down what should be considered a close contact or not. And then to add to the complexity of the situation, we now have a category of a probable case. And in that situation, it typically might be a scenario where somebody has been identified as a close contact, and now they're awaiting test results and they're having symptoms. And there's a high likelihood that that person is going to end up being testing positive. And in that situation, when we're aware of it, we're kind of giving people that heads up and saying, hey, you may need to quarantine in the short term. We're asking you to, and as soon as we get those test results, we'll let you know whether you need to do the full 14-day quarantine or not. And so that creates another wave of communication, as you may have seen an example of recently over the weekend with a case at Ridge High School. So there's a lot of communication. I appreciate that. It can be frustrating. It can be unnerving. And sometimes it seems like it could be more timely. I apologize for that. We're trying to keep up with it as best we can. So that was definitely something that came up in some of those 271 singletons, just sort of that challenge of timing of communication. And I wanted to address that up front because I know we've had a couple situations in the last few days. Some people talked about just rules that they thought were overwhelming, too much. That was another singleton comment. Be more reasonable, find better ways for safety for the teachers was a comment. Some people suggested adding more vending machines to give the students an option for food. Some people talked about athletics. Maybe we shouldn't have athletics because it seems to create some challenges. Some people talked about carrying backpacks and weight for the day because of the fact that we're not using student lockers. People mentioned that could be a health concern for some students carrying a lot of stuff around. The health department being overburdened was mentioned. Not having enough time to eat or drink was a singleton. The idea to have teachers change classes and not students was mentioned. The risk associated with having lunches served in large groups. Other people said, let them play sports. Invite assistance from parents. Is it a good idea to have students eating in class was questioned. Just kind of skimming over some of these singletons. Move school timing to later in the day. So that idea of shifting the timing of the day, that came up a little bit in different open-ended comments, I think kind of circling back to some of our start time conversations and some of the SEL issues. People recognize that, that could be something worthwhile for students. Some people were concerned that rules seem to change a lot or were arbitrary. We are trying to keep up with a lot of communication in terms of new things that come out. CDC tweaks something, we change a definition because of that. Some people said too much work. Some people said not enough work. Ms. Fox alluded to that. I think there was some overlap as people had opportunity to write open-ended comments. They didn't necessarily fall into the specific question category, but that's okay. Provide children with counseling and therapy. So we had a bunch of SEL singleton type comments. Ease up on the forms was a comment. Those were a lot of the singleton commentaries seem to fall into categories associated with health or SEL. Following the open-ended singleton type comments, a lot of people, by the way, why this number is so high at 271, many people wrote an open-ended comment about health and safety saying, it doesn't apply to me because I'm 100% virtual. I'm not going into the school. I don't really have any suggestions about safety protocols. So there were many, many people that noted that. That drove up this number of NA comments. Simplify or enhance daily screening. Many folks alluded to the challenge of keeping up with the forms and the paperwork. Masks, a lot of people have had comments about masks, and they actually fell into a couple different categories. Either, find more ways to give students mask breaks and remove masks, and other folks asking for more vigilance in trying to make sure people are wearing their masks. So a lot of folks had varying comments about masks. Many of the suggestions were associated with maintaining social distance. Don't do anything that reduces social distance. Folks that really wanted the 100% virtual program so that they didn't have to worry about social distancing. So 248 comments there. I'm sorry. Safety practices were good, didn't have suggestions for improvement. A bunch of people said that. Clarifying contact tracing, quarantine, medical procedures. I think that is it's one of these things that until you live it, sometimes it's confusing, and it is a challenge. I know that our medical staff has put together a Q&A to try to address this. And as I mentioned, we are trying to enhance our homepage to make some things right off of www.bernardsboe.com, kind of more immediately address that with a couple of links there about FAQs for parents, as well as the most recent notices. So we will, as we send out those community notices, we will keep adding them to the website as well so people can see what the last notice was that went out. Some folks raised the issue of sports, don't have sports or things that bring students together in person unnecessarily. Lots of folks emphasize the need to have fresh air and good air quality, try to do things that take students outside. Many people raised the issue of SEL, and being in school is good for students and it's good for their health to be in school. So they responded in that way, as this was a health and safety question. I think they felt as though it would be healthier for students to spend more time in school. So we had a lot of folks mention that. Some people were very direct about wanting to keep things clean with sanitizing and washing hands, or some cleaning method or strategy that they suggested. And some folks emphasized SEL as a top priority. Okay. The next open-ended question was, which of the following statements best characterize the direction you would like to see the district go as we move through the school year? Now, if you recall, a few slides ago, we talked about alternative number 1 and alternative number 2, and also the idea of leaving the status quo, right? But remember that about 7% of respondents selected other, and when they selected other, the survey allowed them to write what the other was. So that created an open-ended response within that multiple choice question. And so here we tried to break down into categories how people responded to that. We had close to 300 open-ended responses there associated with choosing other. Full-time right now, return to normal. A bunch of folks said that that was the direction they wanted to see the district go. Variations of the option offered. So alternative 1, alternative 2. For example, some folks said, well, for alternate 1, where you're maintaining the A and B cohorts, go all day doing that for 612, but K5, why don't you do the elimination of the cohorts and bring the students in there every single day, at the K-5 level and dismiss them early. So it's kind of a hybrid of alternate 1 and alternate 2. Those were the kinds of things represented in the 47. Some folks really wanted to emphasize virtual. All students should be virtual. You know, some people felt that we shouldn't have any of these alternatives. Everybody should be virtual. Some folks suggested doing an AM/PM split. That means that some of the students would come in the morning and the other students would come in the afternoon, but the students would come in every day, right? So it's sort of like an A-B cohort where you would bring in the A group in the morning and the B group in the afternoon, and they'd come in every day for, you know, 2 or 3 hours. When conditions improve, move towards full time. Some folks mentioned schedule changes, you know, times of day were a common suggestion. Some things were very specific to special education programs, self-contained programs. A lot of folks throughout many of the open-ended questions, this was a common theme. Folks want to make sure that they still have that virtual option no matter what happens going forward. A lot of people emphasize that they'd like to be able to have the virtual option for the rest of the year. And then again, a variety of singleton comments. Okay, the last question was kind of a little bit of a catch-all, but it came right after the explanation of the alternative program 1 and the alternative program 2. So it was kind of designed to say, well, we've thrown these different ideas out there. What other ideas about programming do you have? So this was something that over, I think it was around 1,200 or so folks responded to this question. And again, it's interesting that we sort of kind of see the same number looking for full day instruction every day. It was interesting here because there were some folks who said, I'd like to see full day instruction every day in person, but if it's virtual, make it full day. So there was sort of this emphasis on, regardless of whether you're in person or virtual, I'd like to see it scheduled for the full day. You know, as we are now, we do have a sort of a split schedule in the morning, a break at lunch, and then a continuation virtually in the afternoon, where students are not necessarily scheduled for specific classes in that afternoon. So I understand, my feeling is that those folks were saying, schedule the students all day long, even if you don't bring them in person the whole day. A lot of folks saying, hey, you know, looks like cases are rising. This isn't the time to change. This isn't the time to do more things in person. Similar to that, people were expressing happiness with leaving things in the current virtual learning environment. So don't change anything, or stay virtual, or stay with the blended program. We had a bunch of folks mention that as well. Those were sort of the group of people that wanted to suggest leaving things for now. There was a lot of language in people's open-ended comments about, you know, for now or maybe later, start looking to do things. But for now, I'd like to see it kind of stay as it is. Well, I'll get into some of these singleton comments in a minute. General advocacy for more instructional time. I think Ms. Fox mentioned this one as well, whether students were virtual or in person. So a lot of folks brought up the issue of just having more instructional time with the teachers, but they didn't really advocate that they wanted to be in person all the time or coming to school every day, 5 days a week. They were just looking for us to find ways to increase it somehow without actually suggesting a particular program. Just sort of an in general, find more time for the kids. Some comments again on safety. Anything that was anything related to reducing social distancing. Some people expressed that that would be a bad idea. Therefore, don't do alternative 2, because we can see that that elimination of cohorts would bring more students into classrooms at the same time. Don't do that. A lot of people said that about alternative 2, and we sort of saw that actually in the way that people might have moved into virtual if faced with the choice of alternative 2 or virtual. Even if they were currently in person in the blended program, there was a decent percentage of people that said they would want to switch to virtual if alternative 2 was the only in-person choice. So that was kind of consistent with that other chart that we looked at. Keep cohorting and go full day in person. Some people just reiterated that as their open-ended comment. They said, hey, go for that. Interestingly, roughly about the same number of people said go with option 2, and we saw that in one of the charts in the data studio, that it seemed like was almost an equal number of folks feeling as though this option or this option was the way to go. And again, I shouldn't say option, I should say alternative 1 or alternative 2. Some people just said thank you in this open-ended response. Current blended model is working well, it's safe. Ms. Fox mentioned this one as well. People looking for something different to happen on Wednesdays, in particular with the 612 students that are all virtual. Many folks said, could we use Wednesdays to come back into school, let them alternate in person, A day, B day, in the same way that the K-5 students are alternating Wednesdays. Some folks wanted to bring students in daily and hire staff in order to keep class size low. So maintain low class size for social distancing, but bring in students every day. Obviously that would take more staff and more space in order to place those teachers in classrooms. Again, Ms. Fox mentioned this one as well. She saw a lot of folks suggesting get rid of specials, don't do lunch or study hall or advisory during the school day. Those kinds of things should be for virtual time, and when you have the students in person, focus on core content areas. SEL concerns, mental health, a good number of folks recognize that issue. Again, we had the suggestion about having students come in every day, but only in the morning or only in the afternoon as an alternative to the AB cohort. A few people recognize that other schools, some school districts are doing alternating weeks instead of 2 or 3 days a week. So they'll go all A cohort for a full week in person, and then that cohort spends the next week virtual, while the B cohort comes in every day for a week. Again, some recognition for special needs programs meeting in person. A desire and need to meet in person was reiterated. Some people just made a blanket statement that distance learning wasn't working well for them. And then we start to get into the fewer responses. Offer specials like music and art in person. Recognizing the challenge that teachers have. Again, Ms. Fox pointed this one out, that some people are recognizing that it's very difficult for teachers to give full attention to the virtual and the in-person students. So don't ask them to do that, just ask them to work with one group or the other. Some people express concern that a change might result in a different teacher being assigned to their child. They didn't want that. Suggestions to use parent volunteers. PD and technical support for teachers, a lot of that had to do with sort of the way they're communicating the different softwares, teach them to use the same things and streamline. And again, we've talked about these last two issues about some of the challenges that people seem to recognize in terms of testing and fairness, whether students are being tested in school or out of school or on Wednesdays. And finally, the later school start time came up as well in this open-ended question. So I did want to touch just briefly to give you a little bit of a sense of some of the singletons that came up for alternative programs. A separation between elementary schools and high schools and middle schools. So sort of that idea that it's okay to do different things at different levels. Some people expressed that they didn't think that students that were on the virtual learning model should be allowed to participate in after-school programs, sports, or clubs because they weren't attending school in person. There was some singletons related on different things associated with seniors. What can you do for seniors this year to make the year special in a positive way? Some people saying they liked the longer periods of instruction, the 50-minute periods at the 6-12 level. A few people mentioned we just started piloting more live instruction while at home with elementary students. Let's see how that plays out. Encouragement to keep wearing masks, let them work in groups at school. Again, longer periods for core subjects, get rid of lunch. Someone suggested one trimester with cohort A being all virtual and cohort B being all in person. So going by entire trimesters. Someone suggested opening more sports. Look at what private schools are doing. Can we bring back mini units if they could be done virtually? Some comments about screen time, different sorts of comments. Some saying it's okay. They're on their devices or TV all day anyway. Don't worry about screen time. Other people saying they have too much screen time. Don't ask them to be on screen so much educationally. More asynchronous work for high school students would help with Zoom fatigue, was another singleton. That's about it on the singletons. Oh, lockers. A couple people mentioned lockers and giving the kids use of lockers, as I mentioned, with the backpacks and the weight of carrying things around. So that was about it on some of the singletons that came along with the programming question. Okay, so going forward, having spent some time and really kind of blitzing through that a little bit with respect to the parent survey. We did just close that this week. I think it was Wednesday morning. I turned it off. And so we have the staff survey that we're now going through, and I believe student surveys. Maybe Ms. Fox, do you know where we are with the student surveys?
Surveys will be going out. I believe it's next week.
Okay. So we want to collect some feedback from the students as well. And then having all of that together, hopefully we can make some recommendations going forward on November 23rd, which is the next board meeting in November. So thank you for enduring that. I know it was kind of a lot. Are there any questions from board members?
Mr. Salmon?
So I know you stopped sharing your, thanks Nick for that.
Sure.
There was on the data studio slides, there was a slide that showed kind of the selection between option 1 and 2, alternative 1 and 2, or then remain virtual. And it looked like, from what I could piece together from that data, there was like 40% of the virtual. Yeah, that would be great if you could go to that.
Yep. I'm working on getting there.
So the preface, my question is essentially, it looked like almost 100% of the virtual only students wanted to remain, didn't want any change in the program, but almost close to 100% of the blended parents, a change. So go before this. Yeah, this, well, no,
Sorry.
number 3.
Page 3, yep.
Yeah, there you go. So like in, for example, like that, the top left, maintain existing hybrid program, 40%. Presumably that correlates to essentially 100% of the at least virtual students, because then if you look in the bottom left-hand side, right, so that's 80%, and then there's I guess I was a little confused. I have some questions about the data there. So like some of the virtual 100% of the virtual learning model parents picked to maintain the cohorts or eliminate the cohorts. Is that what you're seeing there?
Right. So
that's a little confusing to me.
Right. So remember, so the question was, which of the following statements best characterize the direction that you would like to see the district go as we move through the school year, right? So what this bar down here represents is for the parents that are currently have their students in the 100% virtual learning model, where would you like to see the district go going forward? Well, 75% of them said, I'd like to see you continuing with the virtual model, right? 12.46% of them suggested that going forward, we should maintain the cohort system, but go full days. So it suggests that they may, even though they're currently in the 100% virtual learning model, they're thinking going out forward as the school year bears out, this might be the way to go next. That's how.
Yeah, I get that. It just sounds a little kind of counterintuitive, but I understand it's the, it is the survey responses, but nevertheless, so you have, 40% of the responses saying maintain the existing hybrid program, and then 75 to 80% of the virtual saying stay virtual. So it seems like within the virtual community, they're saying we want to keep this, what we have now, but then you're looking at the 51% of parents in the blended cohort saying we want to see some change.
Right. So remember that this is not necessarily saying that 51% of the group is in one of these things, because these two things don't exist right now, right? These two things are, as we go forward, what do you think this is a good direction to go, right? These don't exist right now. What exists right now, if you're in person, is alternating A/B cohorts on a shortened day schedule.
Yeah, no, I get that. So
right. So if you're in that group, right? If you're in that group, blended learning model, right? The folks that are currently in the A/B cohort model, right? 549 of them said, leave things as they are. As we go forward, I don't think you should change anything right now, right? As we go forward, I'd like to see keep the A/B cohorts, but go to full days. As we go forward, I'd like to see you get rid of the cohorts, stick with the half day, but come every day. So that, I think that does make sense, that people that are already in the in-person model want to see more in-person happen, right? So there's a lot of the folks that are in the blending learning model that are saying, I'd like to see more in-person. Some of them are saying, leave the amount of in-person that I've got with the existing, right? And others are saying, I've got another suggestion for you.
Right. Which was 270 something saying, or 211 saying.
Yeah, somewhere around 200 saying, bring everybody in every day, all day.
Right, got it. Okay. So, right. So, it's interesting because it essentially breaks down the way that the district is organized between hybrid and blended. It's just saying that essentially all of the blended families want to see some change, 51% of the 60%, right? So, and then on the next slide, in the data studio,
Yep.
Yeah, so this was, again, sort of confusing to me because, you know, on the left-hand side there of the screen, it says, you know, if the district offers the virtual program or the long day program, which is what I'll call alternative 1, not the more day program, which is alternative 2. If it's virtual or long day, then almost 20% of the virtual only students would want to be switched to a longer day. They would be put in the cohort system, right? That's what this is saying.
If they were, right, so if given the choice, given the choice, if we were to start from scratch and this were your choice, what would you pick? The people in the 100% virtual learning model, 16.56% of them said that they would pick in-person alternative 1.
So I guess those responses, and like going back to the other side, like those responses are very interesting to me because we have that. It's just a little bit less time today, but they're saying, no, I would choose not the virtual. I would choose to go for longer days if that was the option, but I would not choose if it was the half days, which is the current option. So it's interesting that there's such a large percentage there. I'm kind of curious as to what the thinking is. But then if you go to the next data studio slide. So on the bottom, the last graph here about the learning environment, it's hard to tell there, like for kindergarten 1 and 2, what those percentages are in terms of kids that they don't feel like they have a good learning environment. But that's something that, you know, those look like they're larger.
So,
So I guess, go ahead.
Like kindergarten, I'm just trying to highlight it. Kindergarten had 179 people say they thought their learning environment outside of school was good, and 8 people said no. 179 yes, 8 no. First grade was 198 yes, and 13 no. Grade 2, 245 yes, 16 no.
Right. So when, like, in terms of the aggregate percentage, which is 3%, and then in kindergarten 1 and 2, you have double that. I mean, it's not a large aggregate number, but percentage wise, it's bigger than the average across the district. So that might be something where we could take another look and see, you know, what is it about the environment that the kids are having an issue with, whether they're not at home or something like that. So last question on not question, but comment on the data studio thing is that I think going forward, we should be trying to tease out, you know, in particular, on a grade by grade basis, right? The aggregate percentages, I think, are going to be very different because when you start blending like what high school students want and middle school students and elementary school students want, it's going to kind of, you know, skew a little bit because it's obviously different intentions for each grade band. So I think, you know, going forward, as we look at this and get ready for the November 23rd board meeting, we'll probably have to look a little bit more into the grade by grade. And then just a quick question on the last set of slides that you presented about the open-ended responses. So when you had a number next to it, like, you know, 12, 200, 100, that's out of the 4,000 responses that we got. There was, you know, 100 people that asked about sports.
Right. So, So in any given question, so let's say in one of the questions, I think it was on the safety question, we had about 1,400 people respond to that open-ended item. So yes, we had about 4,000 people. We had about 4,000 responses for students, right? Because it's one response per student. But of that 4,000, only 1,400 people gave a response to the open-ended item about safety. And of those, 12 said this, 100 said that. But yeah, they are out of the 4,000, yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much for your question. So, Mr. Colmer, you have been extremely gracious with your time listening tonight. And thank you again for the work you put into preparing the slides in the data studio for us. Is there anything you wanted to just jump in or share or something that you thought I could have clarified better? I don't want you to feel like You have no voice. You have a important voice, Mr. Comer.
Thank you, Mr. Markarian. No, I'm good. Going forward, Tim, it is broken down and perhaps it's just assigned conversation. We do have those just analytics by school and by grade. So it may just take another look at the data studio that's in there.
Thanks, Mr. Comer.
Mrs. McCune?
I had a couple of follow-up comments from Mr. Salmon's comments and questions. I was actually surprised there was as much consistency from K to 12 with some of the answers as far as what people wanted. I thought it might be a lot different, you know, in the younger grades in terms of which choice they preferred. So that was interesting. I think the learning environment with the younger kids, yeah, it could be that they're at daycare or that there's just too many little kids in their house all over each other while they're trying to learn, which is what would have been the case when my kids were younger. So it could just be that, I don't know. And the people choosing that if it switched to more school or longer school, that they would go back from virtual. It is interesting, but I can think of a couple of reasons based on people I know. It could be a childcare thing where they put them in virtual because they needed them to be in the same place all day long and they couldn't deal with the middle of the day. You know what I mean? With a kid coming home in the middle of the day. Or some people just chose it for consistency. So maybe if they felt there was more consistency, you know what I mean, they would send the child in. So it wasn't that they made the choice purely for safety. So those are a couple people that I know have told me things like that. So I just thought that those are interesting answers though.
There was a little bit of that you might tease out from some of the open-ended comments that kind of fits with that idea of consistency, and people's choices for programs were not necessarily driven solely or even largely necessarily by health and safety considerations. Sometimes it was like personal life, how do I get through this situation?
Any other board member questions? Okay, with seeing no other board member questions, I think we're moving on then to, and thank you, by the way, to Mr. Markarian and Ms. Fox and Mr. Comer. Lots of information there. So we are on to the superintendent's report. Mr. Markarian, I see one item there.
Yes, we have to report as part of a change in the law a few years ago, whenever we're having our school bus evacuation drills. So Cedar Hill ran them on those 2 dates, and we have to report that by board resolution.
Mr. McLaughlin, does that require a vote? Oh, we can't hear you.
Yes, any resolution.
Okay, so could we have a motion, please? Mrs. Wooldridge and Ms. Schaefer. Roll call, please, Mr. McLaughlin.
Ms. Beckman,
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer,
Yes.
Mr. Salmon,
Yes.
Mrs. White,
Yes.
Mrs. Richmond,
Yes.
Mrs. Korn,
Yes.
Mrs. Wooldridge,
Yes.
Mrs. McCune,
Yes.
Mrs. Gray.
Yes.
Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. With that, we are moving on to item 10, public comment on agenda items. I'm just going to remind the public, please provide your name and address, first and last name and address when you join us. Ms. Fox will be checking the waiting room for those of you who are Zooming in. And I'm not sure how many we have, but be patient with us. We'll get to you all. And just bear with us because this is a new process. So with that, Ms. Fox.
We ready?
Ready as
Okay,
well?
we have a few people in the waiting room. Let the first one in. Seems like he might be stuck.
Trying to connect audio.
Sometimes I have to leave and come back when this happens.
Let's give it another second. And if for some reason any individual has a problem with the technology, that's why we are keeping the BT Connect email address open, as well as the texting, so that folks can email or text their comment in, and we'll get to it that way. So I think maybe we move on to the next person and see if we can try to keep things moving. Is that okay, Madam President?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
I'll remove him, but then you can try to come back, Mr. Gannon. And I will let the next person in. He's trying to.
All the testing in the world just never goes right when you go live.
Right.
Seems to be an audio issue in both of these cases.
Strike two.
I'll try the next one.
No, it looks like she's there. Ms. Mendez, it looks like your audio is connected, but you're muted. I don't know if you can hear us, but could you try unmuting? Oh, go on.
Okay. A couple more people.
For those of you who have tried to enter, stay with us and hopefully, oh, we have someone who's coming through. So hopefully you'll be able to join us if you try again. Rippy, we see that you're connected, or at least we hope that you're connected based on what it looks like. If you can try unmuting, and let's see if we can hear you. If you try again.
Hi, Karen, I'm on, but I was trying to get on from my computer rather than my phone to make it more clear for you all.
Oh, we can hear you quite well.
I see the other, you're in the waiting room twice, so do you want me to let the other you in?
Connected.
Yes, please.
Okay.
There you are. Welcome. Rippy, go right ahead if you want to unmute yourself and state your name and address and share your comments.
Great. Thank you. This is Rippy Carta, 58 Independence Drive. And my comment tonight is, let me start again by saying thank you for sending out the survey and seeking the Okay, I think I'm going to start again because I just heard the same comment twice. Sorry about that. So
you want to mute the YouTube stream. If you can mute the YouTube stream, that's probably what's causing the problem. So just mute the YouTube and then do audio on for the Zoom call. See if that helps.
just did, and my sincerest apologies for that. So Rippy Carta, 58 Independence Drive. I want to start by thanking the Board of Education for putting out this survey and seeking the public's input. I know it's not easy to deal with all the different views and the emails and the phone calls and so on and so forth that you've been receiving, but this is a very good first step to figuring out what we need to do for the rest of the year. I wanted to comment specifically to say that the virtual students, I don't think that they should be penalized for being virtual. There's various reasons, and thank you to Mrs. McCune for mentioning that. There's various reasons that a student would be virtual. It could be themselves, it could be their family members, and so on and so forth. It could also be the distrust in general from being back in school amongst people who may or may not be following social distance guidelines appropriately. So all of that being said, none of that should really impact a student's right to participate in a club, whether it's all virtual or so on. I feel that that's really penalizing virtual students. And I mentioned this at the last board meeting that teachers shouldn't penalize students who are virtual and make little comments that, oh, well, it's extra work for me and so on and so forth. I understand that our teachers are working so incredibly hard and they should be commended for their outstanding efforts. But those type of comments aren't really productive and it further suppresses the students that are virtual. So that's my comment today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rippy, if we could ask you to exit. Thank you. Okay. Allison, welcome. I'm not sure if you can hear us right now, but we see that you are connected. If you could unmute, hopefully we'll be able to hear you.
Is she talking or am I the only person who can't hear?
Nothing yet.
Allison?
So it may be just sort of a reminder to go to the YouTube live stream. You have to mute the YouTube live stream, but not mute your computer. So you have to click on the live stream where there's the speaker icon to mute the live stream, but not mute your computer. I don't know if that could be the issue.
Pretend you're calling into a radio show. Can't listen to yourself while you're on the radio.
Do you have anyone else in the waiting room, Ms. Fox?
Oh, that's it.
Okay.
Okay, so I guess what we should do at this, Mr. Syed, do we have anyone who has sent in a written comment?
We
Excuse me,
do.
should I remove Allison?
Yes.
I think so,
Okay.
yes.
I'm gonna remove
We
Allison.
have no choice at this moment. So Mr. Syed says that he has some written comments. Just before we move to those, do we, as a board, collectively agree that perhaps what we should do at this moment is for those who've been trying to get in through the waiting room to invite them to now either text or email their comment? I'm seeing some nodding heads. Okay, so I'm just going to say that again, hoping that the public that was trying to join via Zoom is still listening or can still hear us. We invite you to write your comments, either send them to the email address or the text number, which I apologize, I'm looking for here.
Right. So the email address is btconnect@bernardsboe.com.
Okay.
btconnect@bernardsboe.com, or text the comment to 908-292-3047.
Thank you, Mr. Markarian. So with
Sure.
that, Mr. Syed, if you'd like to proceed with those that you've received, and we'll see what happens.
Okay, so as of now, I only have one written comment question on an agenda item, so I'll read that now. It is from Barbara Geary at 66 Dryden Road. In regards to the first slide, it was noted that out-of-district placements were characterized as 100% hybrid. Do you know this is a fact that all out-of-district placements are operating in a hybrid model, or is this just an assumption? How many out-of-district placements are there within the district? Why are they included in the totals of students when comparing hybrid numbers versus virtual numbers? For the survey, were those in the 100% virtual model able to weigh in on the hybrid model? For example, were they able to say that the program was fair, good, etc.? We are unable to, missing the word, I assume, view Ms. Fox's presentation. That's the end of the agenda public comment at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Syed. Okay, so now we're faced with a new question, everybody, because we know we have folks who would like to make a public comment who have been unable to do so via Zoom. We invite those of you out there to still attempt to make your public comment by text or email. And since we don't have any others, we should proceed with the agenda, but we will get them in the record during the non-agenda item portion of public comment. Is everybody good with that? Okay, thank you.
You may also have more luck with people calling in the second public comment.
Okay, yes, we do encourage you to try. We see that it did work for Rippy, and we thank you, Rippy, for joining us to make your public comment. Hopefully others will be successful. And just a note on what Mr. Markarian was reminding everyone, when you join us via Zoom, you'll need to mute the YouTube feed. Is that correct? Okay, the YouTube feed, sorry, I haven't done it myself yet. The YouTube feed in order for yourself to be heard, your audio rather to be heard. Sorry, I'm fumbling over this. This is all new territory for all of us. Anyway, okay, with that, we're going to proceed to our next. Oh, well, Mr. Markarian, would you like to address or Ms. Fox address the public comment that Mr. Syed read in for us?
Sure. Honestly, I'll have to check on that. I have to go back to that chart. I don't know, Ms. Fox, if you know, because I think that Data Studio slide was connected to a Genesis report, so I'm not 100% sure. But I was reporting what came through in that translation,
Yes.
which indicated that the program wasn't virtual, but we may have to verify that. I'm not
So
sure.
we can verify it. It means that what is in Genesis for our out-of-district students has them as a blended learning student. that means, but we can certainly check.
Right, right. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so with that, we are up to approval of minutes. May I have a motion to approve the minutes? Mr. Salmon and Mrs. White. And Mr. McLaughlin, can we have a roll call, please?
Ms. Beckman,
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer,
Yes.
Mr. Salmon,
Yes.
Mrs. White,
Yes.
Mrs. Richmond,
Yes.
Mrs. Korn,
Yes.
Mrs. Woldridge,
Yes.
Mrs. McCune,
Yes.
Mrs. Gray,
Yes.
Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. Okay, so our next item is the Finance Committee report. Mr. Salmon?
I don't have a report, but there are 4 items on the agenda to vote on. So do we do a motion first or?
Motion, please. Mrs. McCune and Ms. Schaefer.
So the first item is standing item. The second one is professional development. The third one is acceptance of out-of-district students for the 2020-21 school year and 2020 extended school year. And the fourth one is to approve the contract with Salazar and Associates for the Ridge High School sanitary line work that's going to be done in the alleyway behind the new gym.
Any
it.
questions? Oh, sorry, Tim.
No, that's it. I'm sorry.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Salmon or Mr. McLaughlin? Okay, then, Mr. McLaughlin, can we please have a roll call?
Beckman,
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer,
Yes.
Mr. Salmon,
Yes.
Mrs. White,
Yes.
Mrs. Richmond,
Yes.
Mrs. Korn,
Yes.
Mrs. Woldridge,
Yes.
Mrs. McCune,
Yes.
Mrs. Gray,
Yes.
Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin, pardon me. Our next item is the Personnel Committee report. There is no report this evening. We do have 12, is it correct that it's 12 items, Mr. Syatt?
It's actually 16. Sorry, Mrs. Gray. Yeah, we have an addendum.
Apologies. So we have 16 items for approval this evening. May I have a motion, please? Mrs. Woldridge and Mrs. Korn. Okay, and Mr. McLaughlin, can we have a roll call, please?
Ms. Beckman,
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer,
Yes.
Mr. Salmon,
Yes.
Mrs. White,
Yes.
Mrs. Richmond,
Yes.
Mrs. Korn,
Yes.
Mrs. Woldridge,
Yes.
Mrs. McCune,
Yes.
Mrs. Gray,
Yes,
Madam President.
thank you. So we're on to the Policy Committee report. Mrs. Korn?
There's no report. Oh, or we're meeting on next Monday. We'll have a report then.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
And that brings us to the Curriculum Committee report. Mrs. Richmond?
Yes, I have quite a long report, sorry. Curriculum met on October 2nd, and we talked a lot about some of the curriculum writing updates that were done over the summer. So we went through English language arts, science, and math. So I'm going to talk to you guys. I'll go through each of the little categories of what we discussed there. In terms of English language arts, there was a virtual and hybrid articulation project K through 12. Each Berners Township School District reading and writing unit of study for all grades was reviewed, and the most essential questions, learning objectives, and mini lessons were identified in order for the account of the reduction in curricular time while still ensuring that students advance in their literacy learning. Common pacing, learning activities, and assessments were determined. Whenever possible, the teams look to link digital resources to help the curriculum implementation. In terms of elementary K through 5, we talked about the interactive read aloud, which is K through 5. This included a curated list of 38 to 40 read aloud titles per grade level. The teachers created a how-to sheet for implementing interactive read alouds in the classroom, including time allocations. They created guides for each title, including summary and overall message, as well as connections to science, social studies, and character education, and what questions to ask students to prompt their thinking and discussion. There was an ELA science social studies integration in grades 2 through 3. They created a cross-curricular integration map to outline opportunities for integrating the science, social studies, and English language arts curriculum through aligning units, student activities, read alouds, and teacher language. They developed core questions to integrate and prompt thinking about social studies and science skills and content. There was a word study revision for grades K through 1. They mapped out a scope and sequence for the year utilizing Hegarty phonological awareness and 95% skills. They created teacher-friendly monthly lesson calendars that reflect learning objectives, spread out lessons, learning objectives over weeks, allowing teacher flexibility. We talked about standard-based report cards in grade 4. We finalized the ELA report card indicators, aligning existing assessments to reporting standards and added assessments as needed. In terms of the secondary grades 6 through 12, we talked about English language, AP English language, where they created a course syllabus document for College Board audit because of the new exam and course description. And in AP research, they integrated the new College Board AP research course and exam description into the curriculum and materials. They revised learning activities and sequencing of units in light of the year 1 implementation, and they updated the articulation between AP seminar and AP research. In terms of mathematics, Mr. Colmer gave us a robust update on all of the math courses. Advanced Math 4, they created a comprehensive document with problems and projects to engage students in meaningful mathematical problem solving tasks aligned with grades 4 New Jersey student learning standards, and everything that goes along with that. In Math 7, they revised the pacing guide to reflect changes from the past year. They planned assessments aligned to grade 7 standards. They gained a better overview of virtual instruction in the blended hybrid model and how to approach that type of instruction going forward. They investigated the types of organization that students might use in a blended learning environment and created tools to enhance instruction. It accelerated Math 7. They set expectations across grade levels. They developed common language and coordinated on setting common expectations, shared and developed instrumental strategies that promote best mathematical practices, created group work strategies and procedures to promote mathematical discourse, researched deeper mathematical application problems to promote problem solving. In computer science principles, they updated the units of study to reflect changes of course models without Project Lead the Way. They modified content outcomes to align with AP computer science principles, collaborated on language to support the transition between computer science principles to AP computer science A. And they rewrote the curriculum in Rubicon to reflect the new course model. And as well as integrated the new 2020 New Jersey student learning standards for technology standards. Grade 5 assessment revision. They reviewed legacy Go Math assessments and modified all existing grade 5 mathematics unit assessments to reflect more accurately students' understanding of the mathematical content and skills. They created separate sections for assessing students' computational understanding, separate from analytical problem solving ability. And in Ridge and WAM's articulation project, there was a course, a cross-course dialogue among course content covered and not covered by the 2019-2020 school year. They developed a weekly agenda syllabus framework. They discussed the best instructional approach for creating a mathematical enriched classroom environment, either hybrid or 100% virtual. And then they discussed how to implement all of that new work. They also did a 4th grade standards-based report card update, developing a standards based report card manual to support the grade 4 teachers in accurately reporting student achievement, and created a checklist with student report card descriptors to keep track of assessment results. We also talked about summer geometry. So they modified this honors geometry curriculum, focusing on priority standards to fit the pacing of a 7-week summer geometry course, created a Google Doc folder with all materials, lessons, and assessments. There was discussion regarding student expectation and workload and what the next steps were going to be in terms of implementing this summer course. We also talked about science and technology curriculum summer updates. Ms. Siak started out talking about with K-5 digital literacy. The K-5 media specialists and computer teachers worked to prioritize a skill set that grade level teachers would rely upon in virtual and blended learning. These skills were pushed to the forefront of instruction so that students would have the skills necessary to complete their work in a fully virtual or blended environment. These skills range by grade level, with kindergarten focusing on logging into a device and opening applications, while older grade bands focus on skills that required more executive functioning, like managing files in Google Drive, the new resource called Code Monkey. This is a K-5 resource to help introduce age-appropriate coding in a blended environment. In terms of K-5 science assessment, upon the decision to leverage a virtual afternoon time in the elementary school to provide social studies and science content asynchronously, the committee worked to develop introductory lessons for all the units that reflected the modified scope and pacing. These were built in Nearpod to be linked via Seesaw in grades K-2 or Google Classroom in grades 3 through 5. Grades 6 through 8 science, all three courses were updated their aging textbooks, and now have online digital access in addition to the hard copies. Beyond, teachers have modified their pacing and revised their protocols for activities. Teachers will do a mix of Teachers will do a mix of recorded labs that students watch in order to complete conclusion questions, as well as modified in-person investigations. In grades 6 through 8 tech ed, there was extreme modification needed here, particularly in the cycle courses where the number of in-person meetings have been reduced. Projects have been modified and new assignments created to provide virtual students with valuable problem solving. I'm sorry, it was virtual or 100% virtual, hybrid or 100% virtual, I'm so sorry. With valuable problem solving experiences rooted in the interactive design process. And this includes use of like household items such as recycled or repurposed cardboard boxes and things that are easily on hand. In grades 6 through 8 on computers, for the most part, these courses were minimally impacted, but modifications were made, alternative solutions developed for software that required specific types of devices. In grades 9 through 12 science, the largest challenge for Ridge was the extensive modification to the labs. In some cases, teachers are performing the experiments themselves, recording them and pushing them out to students. In other cases, the staff are using new resources to push out asynchronous independent work, lab work virtually. Grades 9 through 12 tech ed, computer-oriented courses like CAD, architecture, and robotics have adapted their projects where necessary to work on an array of devices for both hybrid and fully remote students. The woodworking courses faced a larger challenge and have taken a multifaceted approach. Hybrid students will have modified project options When not in class, the students will receive different types of assignments, some computer-based, some paper-based, and some that require engineering design with household materials. Virtual students receive most of their style of projects that are Virtual students will receive more of the style of projects that in-person students receive on their virtual days, as they will never be in the building to work within the shop. Courses like robotics have significant online supports, but new safety protocols and procedures need to be developed in order to safely use and sanitize the limited supply kits. Then we moved on to the Gifted and Talented Education Act. Ms. Fox shared the required report that she submitted on October 1st. The mission of the Burnett Township Gifted and Enrichment Program is to challenge all children to pursue appropriate learning opportunities that promote gifted behavior. Gifted behaviors are evidenced when above average ability, task commitment, and creativity result in original materials, products, and or performances that reflect the highest standards of a discipline. Letters went out to families of those students that qualify for the Quest eligibility process with the requirements and explanations of goals, projects, and assessments, which will evaluate the child's thinking skills, creativity, responsibility for independent learning, and self-awareness. Students will earn points for their project, COGAT score, creativity test, and the total amount of points earned will be the criteria used for identification for primary grades. Then the rest of the meeting was spent talking about return to instruction, and there were a number of different topics that fell under this umbrella. One was the senior internship. Ms. Fox shared an update from Dr. Lazovic, Mr. Fackelman, and Ms. Smith. Due to the fact that students won't be able to move around the building, the students who signed up for a non-credit senior internship, which used to be called the Business Ed Practicum, will instead be in a study hall until we are able to open up to have a normal school day, and they'll be able to move around the building more freely. Ms. Stotler gave an update on the ELL program, which is the English Language Learners. And she explained that there's a need to bring back some of the ELL students for more in-person learning in a staggered manner. Over the summer, it was our intention to bring them in, but we didn't have the staff to accommodate that. Ms. Stotler explained that there are also about 8 to 10 what we call SLIFE, which are students with limited or formal education that have limited support at home and technology challenges that she wanted to bring in daily also. And so she prioritized them into what she thought was her best prioritization to bring them in slowly, carefully, and safely. She also talked about, she also gave a seal of biliteracy test update. This is a test that is awarded to graduating seniors who show their knowledge in 2 languages. The testing for last year's seniors was supposed to take place on the last 2 days in June, and obviously had to be canceled, and all money was refunded. And I believe Ms. Stotler was able to actually deliver this test or oversee the test the week of October 19th, which was after this meeting. Then we moved on to talk about the scheduling update. Ms. Fox and Ms. Smith met to talk about scheduling for 2021-22, which is what we would be doing on if we were all back to normal anyway. That's sort of like the normal progression. Ms. Smith has started the new program of studies, and the administrators would like to not make major changes to the scheduling timeline and maintain the extensions put in place this year that they had put in this year for next year. And in terms of add drops, in terms of the add drops numbers to know, it's still a little premature. We'll probably talk about that maybe at the next meeting. Yeah. And so we talked about diagnostic assessments for K through 5. The K through 5 principals and supervisors have been discussing assessments for the fall, stressing the need to know where the students are with reading, writing, mathematics, where they land, where they have landed once students get settled into the beginning of school. For reading and writing diagnostics, this district has some local internal assessments that they feel are valid and reliable. but they have since decided that they will test students identified for additional supports in reading during the fall administration. This includes any students teachers will be recommending for placement into instructional support for reading. For mathematics, they felt that the MAP assessment in math would be a meaningful tool to administer because the data and how the teacher used that data is relevant to be used as a diagnostic assessment, not for placement though. There is another assessment in Scoop How that is good, that they're providing training for the teachers virtually for during this year. And I believe that the ELA and math MAP tests were being conducted in WAMS already. I think they've already maybe finished. For the hybrid virtual update, overall, the virtual only numbers have increased since the last time we visited the numbers. There are some class sizes that are getting big as students move from in-person to virtual. Administration is keeping a close eye on those numbers, trying to keep the classes balanced. They're discussing how to bring in more students safely and what that would look like and when the conditions would be right to bring more in. Requests are still coming in to move from hybrid to virtual. And as a deadline to switch comes later, or has actually just passed, that number is expected to increase. Very few have requested to move from virtual to hybrid. In terms of the ACT, the deadline, I think we had given one ACT test, right? October 24th. Sorry, this seems so old.
Yeah.
But they are planning to have another date on December 12th that was added to the ACT test. In terms of A and B days that we talked about, Ms. Fox explained over the course of the year that the A days and B days are even. But however, since this meeting, that schedule of A and B days has been modified and reported out on. The question came up about snow days and whether they would be virtual days. And the answer is that snow days are snow days. I think we can quote that. Homework K-12. There is not a no homework policy K-5, but many teachers feel that with the unique format of school this year, they are not assigning the students tons of homework since classwork and homework are somewhat blended in this format. This policy stands that homework K-5 should not be more than 15 minutes of homework. It's a shift in thinking and in what distance learning brings. We have competing needs for families. Some are struggling to keep up with the daily work and others want more. If a parent feels that a student has too much homework or not enough to do, they should be reaching out to the teacher, especially if they are unsure what this student is supposed to be doing. Ms. Fox will reach out to the principals to talk more about this. Curriculum coverage. This is really a question about if they'll be able to cover all the curriculum that they need to this year. Each department has had discussions about curriculum, and yes, they do feel that they will be able to cover the curriculum. Summer curriculum writing was done to modify pace, scope, and sequence of courses to ensure that the critical content standards will be covered. And in terms of this, we had a little bit of a discussion about assessments and the academic integrity of and course testing of virtual versus hybrid days. The questions were asked if there are differences between assessments for virtual and hybrid students, as well as how are teachers giving assessments when students are in person or whether they're in person and some are in virtual or some are at home in a different cohort. Assessments should be a variety of types. They shouldn't be all multiple choice for as an example. The district purchased tools to help vary assessments. Ms. Fox shared an article with the board called One Strategy about a team approach to assessments. Social studies has been using this approach already. Ms. Fox feels that some of the partner quizzes that she's observed through some different courses have been some of the best assessments and learning she's seen, because the assessment is given to two students and they have to figure it out together. The district purchased EduElastic, a tool for teachers to create virtual assessments that are more secure and easier to administer to a virtual environment. One teacher created guidance for teachers on how to use and monitor students while they're taking their assessments. And our next meeting is November 13th. That is my report. Are there any questions? Jen has a question.
I have a couple questions. Sorry, I was writing them down, so it's just going to go through them on my notebook here. So the computer science you're talking about, and that I know what Project Lead the Way is gone. And the computer science, is that just an AP course, or because I know Project Lead the Way you had to take like a test to go into it, right, or something like that, and then so it's being aligned. There's also is there also a CP for that as well, or there is, right? It's just me being ignorant. I'm just
No, there's a CP computer science and an AP computer science.
so this one is computer science principles would be the AP, only the AP one. No,
No, CP.
CP.
That's the CP. It used to be Project Lead the Way, and now it is not. It is just a college prep. It is a college prep computer science class.
okay, because it says modified content outcomes to align with AP CSP.
So it does align, and it is an aligned program.
Oh, that's where I was confused. I was just curious. So it aligns, but it's not. But it's a CP course,
Right.
Okay, good. Because I thought we were missing something there. And then for that geometry summer course, is that like so you take geometry in the summer and then move up to the next level? Or so if you don't get to the next level, do you just take geometry again? Like, what if you fail a course? What if you don't pass? I guess I'm sure it's not an option for kids taking geometry in the summer. I don't know. I mean, that seems crazy.
You want to know what the summer geometry course is specifically for? Right?
Yeah, I do.
It's replacing the algebra summer course. So previously,
Replacing algebra?
so it's kind of a different way for students to maybe get on that accelerated track would be instead of after 7th grade taking algebra, instead of would instead allow the students going into 9th grade to take geometry.
Right.
Instead of taking algebra going into 8th grade. It's kind of just putting the sequencing in a better position for students who are.
But you'd have to take it this summer then to do that.
Summer, right. It's really for students who didn't accelerate earlier in middle school, right? It's another opportunity to try to do that before they get into high school.
So then you take algebra.
2.
What do you take in 9th grade? You take algebra 2?
2.
Yeah.
So you had to take algebra 1 in 8th grade, geometry, which you would normally take when you were a sophomore, like if you're in the, like me, just a normal math person. So you would take,
Yeah, there's so many different ways you can sequence math that, this is
I was
just
just curious about it.
on the accelerated pathway, right? So there's a 2-year accelerated pathway. There's a 1-year accelerated pathway.
Right. So you'd have to qualify to take this, or anyone can take it. You
Right.
have to qualify
No,
to
you do have to qualify.
take the summer course.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So we'll publish that in the winter or late winter, early spring.
Okay. And then under the digital literacy, where you're for the K through 5, I think it was, which I think I'm sure they need, because they're always, I'm wondering, this is going to sound so pedestrian, I don't know. I worry about them learning how to write. Actually write on paper now, because they're young little kids and I get them teaching how to use a computer and all, but do they get to write? Like,
Yes, they do.
write words and use a pencil and paper and like.
Media and tech is one of the special areas that the students participate in. So it's not, there's also separate from the writing program that occurs during, English language arts. So this is one of the special areas of instruction.
Oh, right. Okay. So, I mean, there's time to, I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't know how much time there is to actually, but I guess I have because I don't have little kids. So I'm trying to, it must be hard to do that while you're online to teach
Right
people.
now, you mean, right? No, there's a writing block every day. And so you're right. It has been a challenge, but that was what we prioritized: the reading block, the writing block, and the mathematics block.
Okay, good. 'Cause I'm just asking questions that I think people would want to know.
That's fine.
And then, I don't know. I would like to know how the labs are going, virtual labs are going, because that seems crazy. 'Cause that's just another whole story. And I'm sure they're trying their best, but.
Well, we could get an update, at our next curriculum meeting if if you'd like. Get an
Because
update.
it's hard to, like, even if the teachers have to do it and then video for the kids, it's hard to learn that without hands-on work, I would think. And you know, it's nobody's fault, it's just the way it is. But I guess they try to do it when the kids are in school. I'd have to ask my daughter, because, you know, she's probably not going to want to answer me now, but about when they're in school, they're doing labs, but
They are
in physics, yeah.
modified. They're modified.
Yeah, but you know, it's in person is always better.
Correct.
Okay, and then when you got to the hybrid virtual update, I had a question, because people when you talk about, I'm thinking like our end game is trying to get more people back in school, because that's like where the best learning happens. So, and when we look at and I know you said people are switching more to the virtual, but then, you know, people who want to go in, get their kids in there, they see some classes, some kids are in a one-person class. So then they're like, well, how the hell can we not get people in school because there's one person in the classroom?
There are some small sections like that, but they're not all small like that.
Right, but I'm assuming that if you wanted to get, and this is the high school, so this is, or probably maybe some middle school, but I'm not sure. But I'm mostly here from the high school, and then, so I guess even if you want to get kids back in school, they wouldn't, because of how everyone's schedule works. That's how it works. You can't just throw all the kids in physics to the one class that has one kid in physics, because it wouldn't work with all their schedules.
Right.
You have to look at every section, right? Every section, and there's 1,400.
I just wanted to explain, because people, you know, you see that and you think, how the heck can we not do that? But I know that the high school is a much different animal when it comes to different sections, because different classes, different grades are in different classes, and it's all like that.
So there are smaller sections, but there are still larger sections across the 1,400 sections of classes that we have at the high school. Same as at the middle school. So there are some small, you're right. And the small one, I'm sorry, what?
You can't really combine them, though. You can't combine a class with like 10 kids with the one person class. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm just saying.
It might be running in different periods.
Correct.
So, okay. I just wanted to, like, it's hard to understand.
It is.
Because if you're a person who wants to just get more hours in the school, it's hard to understand when you see a class with only one kid in it or something like that, you know? So I just wanted to ask the question. That's it. I'm good. Thank you.
One thing I would say about that is, you know, the classes were divided into the cohorts so that they were even, but then within those cohorts, students selected virtual or blended. And so within certain sections, more students might have chosen virtual in some sections, but not in all. You know, so it was just like, not random, but the numbers of students who chose virtual varied across the sections.
Right. So I guess we could combine the cohorts, maybe it would go up then.
If you combine the cohorts, yeah, well,
right? Because A and B are like,
in some sections that would work, right? If a lot of the students were virtual, but in over 100 sections, it would not work.
No. Okay.
All right. There may be a breaking point, a tipping point, if you will, if you had enough students that were virtual, that even if you combine the cohorts and brought everybody that wasn't virtual in, that a large majority of sections would still be small enough to allow for social distancing, and then you could have that conversation.
Right.
Okay, so does anyone else have any questions? Okay, thank you, Mrs. Richmond. The next item on the agenda is the Wellness Committee report.
Wellness met on October 22nd, and the first thing we discussed was the rotating drop schedule and the mock schedules in Genesis being run for the schedule, and they were run last spring as well. Conversations are taking place with the supervisors and Dr. Lazovic so we can move forward with preliminary scheduling tasks. A master process and a timeline document has been created so that every step of the process is clear and in great detail explained. And while this document includes information that's relevant to both WAMS and RIDGE, such as the timing of the annual course catalog updates, the rotating drop schedule is for RIDGE only. And experience has been gained from running the mock schedules last year, and that should make it much smoother process this year. Then we had an update from Effective School Solutions, the ESS program. In September, the program was not at full capacity, but evaluations have been ongoing, and therefore the number of students in the program have been increasing. There are currently about 18 students enrolled. Anxiety and school refusal look different for some students now in light of the pandemic. Students are meeting both in person and virtually. Part of the schedule for the day includes family meetings, regular meetings with the Ridge administration team, Ms. O'Connell and Ms. Smith. A weekly student rundown is given as clinicians reach out to the counseling team after meeting with administration. ESS is very communicative, and there are several upcoming events that address mental health that the ESS is putting on November 19th. They are presenting Managing School Avoidance. On December 17th, they are presenting Having Hope, Suicide Prevention. On January 21st, they are presenting Depression, More Than Just Moody. On February 18th, they're presenting Destigmatizing Mental Health. And on March 18th, they're presenting The Language of Behaviors. The Special Education Department is also working with ESS to plan something on helping special education students adjust this year emotionally, mentally, and socially. The program will be specific to the special education population. In addition, a weekly newsletter, Mind Beats, is available as a resource. Then we had an update on the vaping prevention grant project. As reported at a previous meeting, Ridge High School has received a $7,000 grant from Hackensack Meridian. The Berners Township Health Department and Caitlin Cardascio have been coordinated with Ridge Sachs on how best to use the funds. They have until December 2020 to determine, write, and submit plans on how to use the funds, and then we'll have until December 2021 to use the funds. Ideas so far include bringing in speakers that will captivate an audience, both in person and virtually, and the hope is to record the presentations. The content is extremely important, and they are monitoring trends and the evolution of e-cigarettes, vapes, and the vaping culture. The most up-to-date information is desired, and a motivating approach to education is needed. Last year, a presentation was held on the nicotine generation, and a follow-up on how these substances affect the brain, and specifically Juuls, may be an emphasis. The plans will be coordinated with teachers as well, and will most likely launch when everyone is back in person. We had a counseling program update. On September 29th, the district hosted George Scott, and he presented Preparing Children for a Different School World. This virtual presentation has been made accessible to the community and staff on the Board of Ed website. He was a great speaker, and we will consider having him present again when we are all back in person and as social emotional needs present. His message was very important. It's that we need to get back to basics, like getting enough sleep, taking care of ourselves, and taking care of our family. At Ridge, the focus for seniors continues to be on the college application process. November 1 deadlines just came upon us. There are many video tutorials available on the counseling site as to the steps the students need to follow. In addition, the post-secondary handbook is also posted and helpful. The next event the counseling department is planning is geared towards juniors, which more information will be distributed in November. College reps continue to visit Ridge virtually, and there are typically 3 sessions in the afternoon available for students to sign up and attend. Student participation is varied from week to week and is anywhere from 12 to 60 attendees each week. College reps have been responding immediately to participating in these virtual events, and students are experiencing continued accessibility and communication to them. K-12 needs assessment is underway. The SACs wanted to let students have a few cycles of in-person instruction with teachers before administering a survey. A K-5 needs assessment survey will be administered to parents. A 6 through 12 needs assessment will be provided to students to fill in, and it is completely optional, but it is an opportunity to express needs, worries, provide feedback by all grade levels. The survey will be open throughout October. The language in the survey was tweaked a bit for WAMS versus Ridge to make it age appropriate. At the elementary schools, each guidance counselor has their own version of the survey. This is another way in which counselors are able to find students that are on their radar and add an extra layer of support. Ridge SACs are launching their new Google Site website. There are videos introducing each SAC, as well as resources provided on trends and hot topics. A link will be sent through the counseling department at Ridge when this document is ready to be launched. Counselors have begun their Google Classrooms. At WAMS, an individual and group counseling is underway, and at the elementary schools, lunch bunches have begun, as well as lessons, which are a mix of virtual and in person. We were given a career education program evaluation update. The team is working on evaluating the program and will reconvene in November to continue the summer work, review surveys, and discuss the state of career readiness. John Brum and Ms. Smith have been working on the student internship application to make it an online application process, and this will launch in November. Navion's codes have been distributed to 9th and 10th graders electronically for the first time, and parents can have their children's accounts linked. Lastly, we shared an article from the Washington Post entitled, "Remote Learning Has Been a Disaster for Many Students, but Some Have Thrived." We discussed that it's an interesting article that suggests that there are many takeaways to potentially be implemented in school upon return to full-time in person that may be helpful for students having success with virtual school. Our next meeting will be November 19th.
Thank you, Mrs. White. Does anyone have any questions for Jen? Okay. Being none, our next item is liaison committee reports. Does anyone have any? Okay.
No.
Sorry? Okay. And then we are up to public comment on non-agenda items. Ms. Fox, do we have anyone in the waiting room?
No, we do not.
Okay. Mr. Syed, do we have any written comments?
We do.
Okay. Would you kindly share them?
Yes. Okay, the first comment is from Alicia Martine at 118 Blackburn Road. My comment pertains to the implementation of the rotating drop schedule at the start of the 2021-2022 school year. I have stated several times that I'm not opposed to this new schedule. However, I'm against starting it next fall. If we are lucky enough to be back full-time and the way things are progressing, I think that is looking more and more doubtful. I think everyone would appreciate just having a normal year with nothing new. I know you think these kids are endlessly flexible, but they have been tested enough. Let them have 1 year back to a regular schedule where we can all relax and breathe for a moment, and then proceed with this schedule change in 22-23. That being said, I know feelings like mine will be ignored because Mr. Markarian is bound and determined to push this through at all costs. So now here are my questions. We have been told since the inception of this plan that it must have a new cafeteria, which then changed to we must have a cafeteria renovation in order to move forward. How all of a sudden is it okay to move forward without this renovation? What was a necessity is now no longer imperative. What has changed? Additionally, we were never given a plan as to how lunch will work in regards to where students would eat. It was always very loosely structured as we will figure it out, maybe in hallways, maybe in bleachers, but no definites ever stated. So my question is, what is the plan? We need to know how this will work exactly, and we need to know this year, not in September. After a minimum of 1.5 years of staying 6 feet apart, wearing masks, not allowing food and sanitizing everything, how quickly are people going to make the jump to 2,000 kids eating all together wherever they want on dirty floors and bleachers? In conclusion, I think the focus of our district should be only on getting everyone back to school first, planning for a brand new schedule to be implemented next fall when we don't even know what next fall will look like is putting the cart way before the horse. All right, next public comment is from Daria Bendekian at 86 Childs Road. Thank you for conducting a much needed parent survey. For the question that asked whether or not a student will go from alternative A or alternative B or switch to fully virtual, can you please show us the response breakdown, not just by the current model, but also by the school level, i.e. elementary versus middle and high. It is reasonable to assume that the attitude of responders to the full week return might be different based on the school size and a grade level. And once we can see the results by school and the current model, is the district considering a mix of alternatives? Full week return for elementary schools and extended day for middle and high school? Thank you. The next public comment is from, let's see, Priscilla Vincent at 1 Waverly Place. This is Priscilla Vincent of 1 Waverly Place. I have 2 children in Liberty Corner, and we are currently in the hybrid method. I patiently waited for progress toward a new phase and continue to be disappointed. Luckily, my children are capable and independent to a certain extent, and my husband is able to be home, but that's not the case for everyone. With all due respect, the lack of ability to do something as simple as conduct public comment via Zoom in tonight's meeting only further emphasizes how insufficient our current learning model is. How can we expect 6-year-olds to communicate and learn via short periods of Zoom if we can't manage as adults who prepared for it specifically? We need these kids back to school. I live here for a school system I expected to exceed the others, and instead I continue to be disappointed as we are delayed over and over and absolutely no plan is even considered. This is embarrassing and such a disappointment. I trust many of you mean well and would also want to see us progress and improve the current situation. So why isn't anything being done? I look forward to a swift move in a positive direction to get the kids who want to be back in school to more hours in person. Priscilla. All right, next public comment is another comment from Barbara Geary at 66 Dryden Road. When will the map testing results be uploaded to Genesis? Also, this question wasn't answered. For the survey, were those in the 100% virtual model able to weigh in on the hybrid model? For example, were they able to say that the program was fair, good, etc.? And that is all the public comment I have at this time, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Syatt. And Ms. Fox, just to double check, was there anyone that joined the waiting room while Mr. Syatt was reading?
No.
Okay, thank you. Before I ask Mr. Markarian about any comments that he has for any of the public comments that were just read, I just want to say to the public, we're trying. This is not easy for anyone, and we apologize for the fact that the Zoom waiting room public comment effort didn't go as well as we had hoped. But that said, we're not going to give up. We want to do better. We want to improve this process. And we would like to get to the point where we can bring meetings back in person. That is another effort that we are working on. So to the commenter who is concerned about, the disappointing Zoom public comment, your point is well taken, and we will do better. Mr. Markarian, would you like to address any of the comments?
Sure. Just to follow up on that, we have tested the approach and it did work in terms of letting someone in. We also have an IT director who is investigating and tested using the dial-in method, which worked fine. I'm sure board members might have noticed him in the actual Zoom call. So technologically, I think we are prepared. I think the system does work, and I can't explain why on some user ends it didn't work. I apologize for that as well. Obviously, our goal was to try to create a situation where folks could actually join. So we will keep working on that, and as you say, try to create the best experience possible so that folks can articulate their own public comments for themselves. I did see the question about the rotating drop schedule. Absolutely, we've had a lot of conversation about the cafeteria in order to make unit lunch work. And I know that we've had an explanation from myself saying that at the end of the day, you could simply tell students you're going to brown bag it and not do anything with the cafeteria at a very far extreme and still be able to have a quote unquote unit lunch. The concept for us in our district was to try to create a similar quality experience for lunch that the students currently have gotten used to. That has really been what's behind the need to do something with our cafeteria facilities. And we have certainly had multiple conversations over the years about what might work best and what might be most affordable in the context of balancing resources. So I agree, we've had a lot of different conversations about how to make the cafeteria work. And we, the concern that I have is trying to get to a point where we're able to provide a level of service that I think the community has been accustomed to. Obviously, we're in a much different time now than we were a year ago. And so in order to make progress, can we try to continue this effort in a way that would be productive for us and not necessarily have the ideal scenario for lunch? I think that that is possible. And, one of the things that would help us with our current situation, if it were to continue, God forbid, is a schedule that has a unit lunch that can be dropped out of the classes that are being offered. Many, many parents in the survey complained about the fact that lunch was still in the schedule. Why is lunch in the schedule? Use that time for instruction. We can't do that right now with the way the schedule is built. If you have a unit lunch, you can drop it out, no problem, and you're not spending any time in the school building in a lunch period that you don't need to be in. So it does represent advantages, even if we had to sustain a longer situation like the one that we're in, or if it were to return in some way, it would be a better schedule for us to be able to move in a direction where lunch periods don't need to be offered and we can focus on just having the classes. So it has advantages. Certainly recognize the desire to have more hours of in-person instruction, a sentiment that many people did express as we went over in our survey. In terms of the breakdown of how people responded in different buckets, I think that actually was emphasized and shown in the data studio. And when we post the presentation from tonight, I think people will be able to see that and recognize that the way people responded to different items was broken down by grade level as well as school. And as far as open-ended comments, there were multiple opportunities for open-ended comments. So I think that anybody, regardless of the model that they were in currently, could articulate an opinion about any of the other models. That's all I have.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Markarian. With that, we are up to board forum. Board members, does anyone have anything that they would like to ask, discuss? Nobody?
A quick thing, I just wanted to say that when they were talking about the ELL program, the kids getting in, it seems like it was very important to get them in there, like as fast as you can, because it seems like they really need to be in school. So
We have been able to do that with many of them.
that's great, because that was making me sad, because that's kids who really, really need to be in school.
Yep.
And the other thing I wanted to say is the survey is great. I love this. I'd love to see how many, I know you broke it down, but when Tim was talking about it, it was confusing, like looking at like the 41% hybrid, like that first slide. And it looked like it kind of like incorporated the virtual people into the hybrid. I'd like to see how all the hybrid people feel about moving. Because everyone who's in hybrid, I guess, wants their kids in school. So if you just took them and saw who wanted to go more into school, you could, I don't know, some kind of like where people who are already in school want more school, because I think some people feel like people who are virtual. They're 100% virtual. So people who want to be in school want more school. So it's kind of like a split, like, what do you do? So I'm, just looking at it that way to try to get more hours in school.
Yeah, I think
I know it's where you're going, but I don't want to.
Yeah, no, but I think that we looked at that exact line, and I thought that category of folks that you're talking about did represent that they were looking for more in person, or stay where they are at the current level of in person, or they had other as well. So a large fraction of that in-person population, I think you're right. I think they did express the sentiment that they wanted more than currently is happening. And I think I think the more you drill down to it, the more that you'll see that. And I agree with you. Yeah, I think that's true.
Especially like the young, because it seems like I'm hearing a lot about how it's the house, being in the household now is very stressful when you're trying to teach kids, work, and, you know, manage everything. And it's becoming like where the home is becoming the stress. Like parents are under a lot of stress. And I'm hearing it more and more because it's, you know, it's 8-9 months now. And so, you know, people are getting tired and yeah, I'm afraid, you know, I mean, really stressed out, like problems in the home. So I'm hoping that we can help people out. I don't know how. I know there's so many hurdles we have to go over, but it's just things I'm hearing from people I know, and in people's homes are just not becoming the sanctuary you want them to be, because you're screaming at kids to get homework done. They're online here. Your husband's working over there. It's just becoming a real problem. So, and I know we don't have all the solutions, but just giving people a voice that, you know, this is a long time and people are under a lot of stress, and, you know, hopefully we see a light at the end of the tunnel, which unfortunately it seems not to be there. So when there's hope, everyone's hopeful. Now it's getting dark at 4:30 and it's getting cold. So, you know, I worry for people and families. So hopefully we'll get everybody back in school someday soon.
Suzanne?
If anyone's looking for something to do because they're going a little stir crazy, I think the theater department coming up with this outdoor play on the 13th and 14th. Tickets are very inexpensive. It'll be socially distanced on your lawn chair, and they're doing It's a Wonderful Life and A Christmas Carol. So I might get everybody a little bit into the Thanksgiving-y holiday spirit. So the tickets are available on Ridge Pack. Outdoors, something new, something different in November.
So, Mr. Markiran, I have a question about one of the things that Mrs. Korn said a minute ago, with regard to, like, for example, the question that Tim brought up, which I think was an interesting question, and I know Robin followed up on it, but do you have a detail to drill down? Because my immediate reaction was what Mrs. Carter said, that that segment that Tim was asking about is probably dealing with something else that is causing them to say that makes it a little bit counterintuitive, like Mr. Salmon said. Do you have enough information to get a better read on any of that?
Well, I mean, we know who responded per child. So, you know, you can actually contact people and ask that question, you know, but it's not as if it's in the survey, like, you know, please tell us what motivated you to make this decision or make this selection. That's not in the survey data. I mean, we only have what was collected from the questions themselves. So it doesn't really go beyond that.
Okay, I was just curious. I mean, there's been a lot of pondering prior to this survey as to how certain groups, depending on what their current selection is, might respond to an offered change, right? That there could be, you know, one of two reactions to any number of scenarios. So as you look at them and as we consider some of what Mrs. Korn was saying, I'm just wondering, you know, is there a way? But I guess you're right. If you want more information, especially with those small numbers, you'd be able to contact those folks.
Yeah.
I see Mrs. McKee has her hand up.
Correlate it with what the selection is, because some people that I know are choosing to change their selection to hybrid for the, you know, next trimester or marking period. So those might be the same people. They might have chosen that because they're already planning on going back. So when we have those numbers, then it might be similar. We don't know, right?
Yeah, I think
We do
Robin's
ask.
point, like, you know, Robin made a good point, because the way I was thinking about the virtual community was that it was purely based on health and kind of social distancing, but the component of schedule, like, consistency and schedule duration is definitely a real concern, which I didn't think about. I was ignorant of that. So like, I think if you are a working parent, maybe it's, or two working parents, maybe it's better to have the child in school for 3 full days and then do 2 virtual days or something like that. I didn't realize that, but that's a really good point.
Well, I mean, if you paid for for a child to be somewhere else to do their virtual learning, and the bus can't take you to, you know what I mean?
Right.
Well, that's why I think the question about how is the environment for your learner? Because like, if you have your kindergartner at the Y with 20 other kids in a room that are like, 50, all different grades or something like that, it could be a tough environment. So maybe even though you're virtual at that point, you'd want to bring the kids back to school so that they have a more consistent environment rather than just being at the Y 5 days a week.
Did anyone else want to add anything? I thought I saw a hand. Okay. So with that, nothing else for board forum? Then we can move for adjournment if anyone wants to do that. Mrs. Korn and Mr. Salmon. All in favor? That was unanimous, Mr. McLaughlin. Thanks, everybody. Have a good.
Thank you.